The Caribbean has returned to the global spotlight. Venezuela once again stands at the center of a broader strategic contest, and the movement around it is no longer symbolic. For years, the region seemed static, but in recent months, the pace has shifted. The United States, Russia, and nearby states are taking more active positions. These changes are not dramatic, but they are steady, and small moves, when combined, create meaningful impact. This is the new context shaping Venezuela today. Not an open conflict, not an immediate threat, but a slow escalation that deserves attention. We start with the United States. Washington deployed the USS Gerald R. Ford to the Caribbean. Officially, it is part of a counter-narcotics mission, but aircraft carriers are rarely used for this type of operation. The deployment raised questions. Is this law enforcement or strategic pressure? Many analysts lean toward the second answer. The U.S. has long viewed the Maduro government as a source of regional instability. Sanctions continue year after year. Diplomatic efforts rise and fall with no clear direction. The United States also keeps a large reward in place for information leading to Maduro's arrest. This is not a common measure toward a sitting head of state. For several Latin American governments, it feels excessive. Criticism of Washington's approach has grown. Some countries argue the U.S. still relies on an old policy framework, firm pressure, limited coordination, and minimal regional consultation. But for the U.S., this is a matter of geography and national interest. The Caribbean is close, and Washington does not want external powers expanding their influence so near its borders. Russia reacted quickly. Moscow viewed the increased U.S. activity as a signal to accelerate its own engagement. The Pantsir S-1 and Buk M-2E systems were delivered ahead of schedule. Technical training for Venezuelan personnel also intensified. For Russia, Venezuela is more than a partner. It is a strategic foothold, and this relationship has been cultivated over many years. When U.S. pressure grows, Russia strengthens its commitments. The tone from Moscow remains calm, but its actions show a clear direction. Discussions have emerged about enhancing Venezuela's missile capabilities, not for offensive use, but to build a more credible defense. This approach increases Washington's caution, not because of an immediate threat, but because it shifts the balance of influence in the region. Caracas has raised its readiness levels. This move was not announced loudly, but the signs are visible across several strategic zones. More than 200,000 personnel were mobilized within a national readiness structure. Joint exercises were held along the coastline. Radars that had been quiet are active again. Air units increased patrols. Small naval vessels strengthened their presence along key maritime routes. Logistics bases show renewed activity. The objective is not to initiate conflict. It is to avoid entering a crisis in a weakened state. Venezuela understands that pressure can come from multiple fronts. Its posture is defensive. But the scale of preparation adds complexity to the regional landscape. To understand today's tension, we must consider the U.S. perspective. For Washington, the Caribbean has long been treated as an extension of its own security zone. Since the 19th century, foreign influence there has been viewed as a challenge. Because of this mindset, any Russian engagement, no matter how small, can appear sensitive. Not because Russia threatens U.S. territory, but because it disrupts a long-standing structure of influence. The United States often views the region through an internal security lens. Latin American countries, meanwhile, approach it through questions of sovereignty. That difference creates friction. U.S. officials say they want stability, but their methods often generate unease. Even governments traditionally aligned with Washington have voiced concerns. Their criticism is simple. The U.S. approach can be too dominance-oriented and not collaborative enough. And that limits diplomatic flexibility. Reactions across Latin America vary. Colombia expressed concern. Brazil adopted a wait-and-see attitude. Mexico chose diplomatic neutrality. Several Caribbean nations worry about large-scale military assets appearing so close. They do not want their territory to become a stage for major power rivalry. Outside the region, the European Union calls for dialogue. China insists on respecting sovereignty and avoiding unilateral action. Regional groups like CELAC and CARICOM urge all players to avoid escalation. These mixed responses show a clear trend. Latin America is no longer tied to a single geopolitical orbit. Each state is now acting based on its own interests. Venezuela's current situation reveals a new geopolitical pattern. No dramatic turning point, no immediate confrontation, but a steady sequence of moves reshaping the region. The United States is defending its traditional framework. Russia is reinforcing its strategic presence. Venezuela is trying to survive between two major powers. The tension is not at its peak, but the risks are visible. And any miscalculated step could trigger broader consequences. The Caribbean is entering a new phase, and in this phase, diplomacy matters more than ever. Without it, small actions could grow into problems far beyond the region.